It took me, like you said, 12 years at Ernst Young, another, I think it's 5-6 years of a venture studio. And then all that saved up money-wise, financially, to take a shot at being a founder. I was already married at that time when I started as a founder. I had a very hard time having kids. So it was such a precious time when I had kids, but they were a very young age. They were still toddler age at that time. And making a decision to go, I want to do something at the time, to me, crazy, like totally opposite of what we're taught. Corner office, nice paying job, security. Let's give all that up, right? And let's be an entrepreneur with no health insurance, no guaranteed paycheck.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Conductive Conversations. I'm really excited to speak with our guest today, Joshua Lee. Josh and I go way back, all the way back to middle school. We met each other at church, served together on the worship team. Josh led on the guitar, and I played the drums. We even went to our senior prom together, different dates, same group. And despite growing up in Southern California and attending high schools in two different cities, we both chose to go to UCLA. We became roommates during our time there, even though most people warned us not to do it because it might actually destroy our friendship. However, that didn't happen. In fact, quite the opposite. And since Josh, you're such a scholar, you actually finished college in 3 years. Why would you ever want to graduate college early? When I studied abroad in Hong Kong, you decided to begin your career at Ernst Young while getting your master's degree at USC. And so my other question is, how could you have gone to the enemy school after graduating, from UCLA? Soon after, you began your career in tax at EY in Los Angeles. And what would seemingly be an exciting career at EY, you decide after 12 years to leave and begin your entrepreneurial journey. So I'm actually really excited to dig into that. Similar to lots of folks who are second-generation immigrants, there's this sense that the end-all and be-all is to attain a fantastic corporate job at a well-known company and do that until you retire. At least that seems like the goal, but you decide to actually take a completely different path. And I think what's really interesting about the entrepreneurs we back at Conductive Ventures is we always say we like backing unconventional entrepreneurs. And I think your background for sure to a T is unconventional. But what I really want to dig into today and what I think our listeners really want to know about is your collection of comics and why you love collecting comics so much. But we're going to circle back to that a little later. In my 20 years of venture capital, I've discovered there's no real typical path, despite the fact that in Silicon Valley, there's a steadfast belief that being a 20-something Stanford graduate with a hot new startup is what is preached. However, you came at entrepreneurship in a very different way. So before we kind of dig into that, I'd like to take us back before I even met you in middle school. What I think is fascinating about your life is the fact that you grew up with a single mom, Mrs. Lee, who's fantastic. Shout out to Mrs. Lee, who often spoke Cantonese to me, despite the fact that I'm Taiwanese, but that's all good. Your father and your younger sibling passed away when you were young. Can you tell me how that impacted you?
Yeah, first off, this is 20 plus years in the making. We've been roommates, as you pointed out, since college. And those conversations at night when I was trying to go to sleep, Carey would start with, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And literally those conversations would go until literally I saw the sun come up. And I was like, oh, so having this being documented, doing a podcast with you is amazing. So number one, thank you for having me. Number two, that's a good question. So my dad passed away when I was in 6th grade. So I remember being brought up in Long Beach where there wasn't actually a lot of Asians. number one. So I felt like the minority to begin with, being Cantonese, as you pointed out, being Chinese, and just growing up in Long Beach. And that's all I actually knew. And then when my dad passed away, it was actually my mom's coworker. She's a nurse. Again, shout out to my mom. Hi, Mom. And her coworker actually suggested that we go find a Chinese church, because my mom, is a churchgoer, but didn't feel at home with the church that we were currently at, which was predominantly American. And so we decided to go try to find this church in Cerritos. And this is a flashback and kind of dating probably both of us. But I remember trying to find this church with my mom. And for me, Sundays weren't about worshiping God. I was in 6th grade. It was about watching football. Like literally, it was NFL day. My dad and I used to watch football growing up. It was the one thing that we really enjoyed together. And so Sunday was like, let's watch, the NFL. And so my mom said, let's go find church. I'm thinking the same type of church we've always gone to. And so this is dating myself here, but my mom charged me with a Thomas guide. So for those of, the listeners out there who don't know what a Thomas guide is, it's basically a map and driving system to find directions. And you'd literally have to look up your destination
On paper,
physically in a book. At the very end of the book has the location, and then it would tell you what page and what section of the grid. So page 91,
A3.
A3.
Yeah.
And so my mom was like, let's go find this church and in Cerritos. So I remember being in charge of this, and my mom has like literally no sense of direction. And so as she's driving, we come up to literally where our church is. And it was like, should I make a right or left? And literally there was something inside of me, like me, that said, let's go home. Like, I want to go watch football. It's about to start, in about half an hour. And so, but literally something inside of me, like, knew that it was on the left-hand side. This was like Gridley and 166, I believe. Right. And I was like, and for something that stood inside of me, I was like, you know what, Mom, make the left. And it was, again, I was like, against my better self of what I wanted to do. But literally that's where we found the church. And I think that was such a important part, because it was there that, I actually met you.
Yep.
I actually met your brother first. We actually went on a mission trip to Mexico. And had it not been for this church, I wouldn't have met my closest friends. I wouldn't have grown in my faith.
Yep.
And probably we wouldn't have been roommates. I can almost guarantee that. We were so loud though at UCLA. We may have met each other there. I don't know, but we definitely wouldn't have been roommates. So that was an awesome time. I mean, no, I wouldn't want that for anyone, to have someone lose their father so young. But for me, it was actually part of the process. So for me, losing my dad at a very early age, and then finding God as almost, sort of a father, a heavenly father, if you will, right? And then at the church too, there were so many father figures that I thought, and in the Chinese culture, Asian culture, everyone's an uncle or an auntie.
Yeah.
So for me, there was a lot of uncles who came alongside, that mentored me, that took the time to get to know me. And so that was such an important part. And then we had a youth group that was amazing. Like every Friday night, every Sunday, it was something I actually looked forward to going to. Like we would all meet up after, really hard week at school perhaps. And then we'd always have this one safe place where we could just be ourselves. And I think that really helped and supplements, how hard it was for my mom trying to raise me. So again, she worked massive amount of hours as a nurse to support me, anything that I wanted to do, but she was super conservative. So let me add that. So my mom, being brought up by my mom, and being, I guess, Cantonese, I don't know if that has anything to do with it culturally, but all debt is bad debt, for example, right? We don't get debt. We don't take debt. Pay off all your credit cards, even for the points. And so it was strictly, you brought up, hey, go to school, go to college, get a great job, graduate early, right? Those things were just instilled in me.
Save on tuition.
Save on tuition, yeah. She was subsidizing, she was helping pay for college. And so it was my job to, if the opportunity presented itself, to graduate early. And it was a function of the high school I went to as well. I mean, every class I took my junior and senior year were AP classes. So I came in as a sophomore. Let me just caveat that. It wasn't
Yeah.
that I was super smart. I think everybody from our high school probably went in as a sophomore status. That actually, in hindsight, took us in two very different directions,
It did.
right? Because I graduated early, went to, as you said, the other school,
Yep.
right? And you were in Hong Kong studying abroad, meeting other people like in our circle.
Yep.
And which is amazing too. And we all somehow convergence came back
Yeah,
together.
I never thought
right?
about that. It did really take you and I, like our paths really diverged there. Because I always will say that studying abroad was so pivotal in terms of what an eye-opening experience it was, but also the people that you meet that, again, influence you and kind of open up your world that much more.
And do you remember during your time in Hong Kong, I actually, in that summer, went with a nonprofit to go teach English.
Yeah, I remember that.
In Hong Kong and in Guangzhou. So we actually overlapped. And that's where I got to meet your friends
Yeah,
from study abroad.
yeah,
Right? I remember, I don't know if we should say their names or not, but yeah, they became my friends too.
yeah.
through
Well, we
that.
had interviewed Kevin Chu in the previous episode, and he became a really close friend.
Was that the professional poker player? No, I'm just kidding.
And so, he was very, very influential in terms of,
I remember you were busy playing tennis at, Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And Kevin took me out.
yeah,
And we hung out together with like Kimberly and some other
Yep.
friends of ours. And so that was a blast.
Yeah.
And so, but you're right. It was kind of like sliding doors because I
little
remember
bit.
thinking,
never thought about that.
what if I stayed and I remember you specifically, chose Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I want to go to Hong Kong too. That'd be so fun. I speak Cantonese.
I don't.
I know you don't.
As
But yeah,
Mrs.
no,
Lee,
actually,
Mrs. Lee remembers. She'd be like,
Actually, you came back I was super proud and super impressed. You actually came back very fluent. Had a full-on conversation with my mom right when you came back from Hong Kong. That was like the
all
apex.
2 sentences.
No.
All two
It was a
cents.
full-on conversation. And that was like probably the apex of your Cantonese career. But
I married Cantonese.
you did.
My wife is,
and I
family-
married Taiwanese. So, I mean, there you go. And my mother-in-law is a Chinese school teacher. So there lies the irony. But I'd always wondered if I'd gone with you to study abroad, right? Or if I didn't
Would've had a
graduate
blast.
early. We would have had a blast. And would I have gotten into iBanking, right? With Kevin, with yourself, Paul. I mean, would I have gone with you guys? Probably, because when you left, and I think this is where the sliding doors happened. Yeah, UCLA at the time, they now have an entrepreneurship minor. They have business, but at that time, remember it was business or
but it was
business
more
economics.
biz econ.
Exactly.
Right.
And so they pushed accounting
100%.
as a minor. Business economics,
Isn't
accounting.
it still mostly business economics right now?
It is, but that's where I think they're really trying to
Add
build
finance and
finance, the
organizational
entrepreneurship.
behavior,
Yeah.
because they obviously have a wonderful business school.
They do.
And there's no reason why you can't expose the undergrads.
I'm trying to help
that.
out there sometimes. I co-teach or substitute teach. There's a accelerator out there. UCLA Ventures is out there now.
Yeah.
And so really good, awesome people from industry who are volunteering, people who have successfully done well in the startups, or maybe even haven't done well in startups, and they're giving back by teaching at UCLA. So you're absolutely right. I have not been able to figure out, like, why can't we emulate something like
Haas.
Berkeley
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
Skydeck, right? Or maybe Stanford and StartX.
Yep.
Something to that effect. And so, but I'd always wondered, yeah. But while you traveled abroad and then eventually went into iBanking, venture capital, right? I was there like, well, since my best friend's not here, and all UCLA pushed was accounting.
Yeah.
I was like, and that's all I knew at that time. It was a big five. This is right around
Yep.
when Arthur Anderson.
Then one of them went bankrupt.
Yeah, too big not to. Well, other stories, but it became the big four right
Yep.
around that same time.
And that was a phenomenal, if you could get it, like that was a great job coming out of UCLA.
Yeah, that was the other thing. I thought they pushed really hard for the big four, big five.
Yeah.
They partnered really well with those firms to bring the partners onto campus, and they did heavily recruiting.
Yeah.
From UCLA, USC, Northridge, schools around the area. They did a phenomenal job. But that's literally just almost by default what I went into.
Yeah.
Just because. And then it was actually Ernst Young that actually sponsored me
Yeah.
to USC and said, hey, I think I was the last in my class to actually be given that opportunity.
So I'm really curious, when you think about your entrepreneurial journey to date, do you ever think back to, I'm sure have you ever thought about how losing your dad at such a young age impacted you positively or negatively on your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, as it ties to the entrepreneurial journey, that's a great question. So I thought it made me more empathetic, number one, to other people who maybe had a single parent, whether that be their mom, their dad, both. And so that it made me more empathetic. My mom did a really great job in filling in those gaps. Like I was also a single child, so I was the only child, right? You brought up my brother. My brother had passed before I was even born. So that was something I learned about as I grew older. And, then losing my dad, it became kind of like, that Will Smith song, like just the two of us. So me and my mom were tight. She literally was my best friend. I relied on her for everything. And so it made me more empathetic to other people who were actually in need. I didn't actually think of myself being behind the eight ball at all. And I had best friends like you. So I feel like I had siblings all along growing up too. And, but as it relates to the entrepreneurial journey, I think it is very similar to the Conductive Ventures mantra, right? The unconventional. So literally coming into a place where, again, being super conservative, right? I didn't start like being a founder. I did investing prior, doing a venture studio of sorts after Ernst Young, and identifying people, with different backgrounds, very similar to your mantra. But I think it took me, like you said, 12 years at Ernst Young, another, I think it was 5-6 years of a venture studio, and then all that saved up money-wise, financially, to take a shot at being a founder, right? And it wasn't like the other way around where we saw friends, right? And you backed them even that came out of college and you knew right away they were going to be an awesome CEO, that he or she was meant to do this. And it was almost, you bring up Kevin, for example. You just knew he was going to do well. It may not have been on this first idea, second idea, or third idea, but even then you're like, yeah, Kev, you're definitely a CEO, right? A visionary, someone that rallies people, no pun intended, rallies people together, right? And so that was very, very apparent, right? For me, I think of it more, maybe I'm the anomaly, maybe I'm not. I read something where the more successful entrepreneurs, average age is 45, I heard. I don't know if that's a true stat or not. But for me, I think of entrepreneurship like dropping out of college, to your point. I think of it right after college if you had to. And again, being culturally Asian, it was like, no, you got to get your college degree, right? You can do whatever you want after you graduate or after you get, this under your belt. But until then, you're going to do this pathway, and it's the more safe route. Again, my mom didn't believe in debt and she passed that on to me, felt responsibilities and wanting to help out my mom or pay back what she paid for my schooling. And so again, it took, let's add that up, maybe 17, 18 years before I say, oh yeah, now I'll be a founder, right? And so that was very different. And it was tough because how did that impact me? One, I was already married at that time when I started as a founder. I had a very hard time having kids. So it was such a precious time when I had kids, but they were at a very young age. They were still toddler age at that time. And making a decision to go, I want to do something at the time, to me, crazy, like totally opposite of what we're taught. Corner office, nice paying job, security. Let's give all that up, right? And let's be an entrepreneur with no health insurance, no guaranteed paycheck. We don't know, right? And I thought, because I had savings, that would help. But, that obviously dwindled, and even that hurt, right? Every time I opened the bank account, we ate into our savings. But that's what it's there for. but you never, again, think of it. You're like, well, how much do I really spend a month, with my family and stuff? And so, but having the support of my wife, spouse, amazing. She was amazing. She thought I was going to become a pastor, right? Going back to church a little bit. So she was like, "Oh, I'm waiting for you to leave. I've been waiting for you to leave." And if you ask her, I think she would have told you that I should have left Ernst Young probably 5 years earlier.
Would you agree?
In hindsight, yes.
Okay.
In hindsight, even now today, and I tell this to a lot of my own kids, and I tell students that I talk to, I think there's something. We have a mutual friend, right? He says, "Cash can make you rich, but equity can make you wealthy," right? And who am I talking to? Mr. VC here. But in hindsight, in your 20s, in your 30s, and now in my 40s, I think it's actually a greater risk to not do what I just did in terms of being a founder and entrepreneurship. I mean, we know you can make a very good living. It's safe, to your point. And it's more conservative. We label it that. It's common sense, sensical in that. But I mean, I think from an entrepreneur perspective, having an asset that you build that's yours, if you do it right, then it actually makes more sense than actually doing a corporate job and saving and doing it the regular way. So
you've talked a lot about how the way that you and your mom were super tight, just the two of us, a lot of the foundation that makes up your character as a founder was heavily influenced by your mom and obviously the community around you. And I think one of the most important character traits of an entrepreneur is resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about how you learned resiliency in the way that you grew up?
Yeah, I think it's twofold: resiliency and retraining, my paradigm of maybe being conservative, right? Definitely in terms of not giving up. I mean, that's the easy, straightforward answer, because challenges are always being, thrown our way as founders. But outlook and completely being an optimist to a point, to a fault, right? That's like seeing the best in everything, in every person that we meet. So I think from that perspective, resiliency and having an attitude of, not seeing it the same way as everyone else. So 99% of the people will tell you, hey, this is not going to work, right? And let's think about when we were in college. You and I went down to Lollycup,
Yep.
Westwood Boulevard, and we said, you know what, let's buy the Boba franchise together. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
We actually went
100%.
and we actually sought after.
Actually, my notes here. So thank you for
snaps.
bringing that up.
Yeah. And so Carey and I went down to the only boba shop at that time. It was freshman year. And we found out what the franchise fee were. And we're like, nope, not going to do that. I think it was $50,000 at the time. And we said, hard pass, right? And in hindsight, we probably could have done it. We would have done it, and we would have been
Probably would have been profitable for some time.
Yeah, the second boba shop. And I think you and I are still on record having credit for bringing the first boba shop to campus. It's a boba shop called Relax Station over on Sawtell. And it opened really late. We took our friends to study. And we said, let's not give up giving UCLA its first boba store on campus if we couldn't do one ourselves. And so it was that type of resiliency. We're like, hey, we're not going to take no for an answer. This is just, a maybe. Let's try second year, third. We finally got, boba shop on campus. But yeah, I don't see things as negative. I always see things positive, and which is hard too, because you said positive. That's obviously the positive in seeing the good in everything. But the negative is it's an Achilles heel. Like, I may not be able to let go or fire someone, right? At the right time, because I'll make it work. No, this person's skill set, we just haven't found their superpower yet, or something to that end. Or let me take care of that for you, a kind of a servant's heart sort of thing, where you don't have time, let me help you. And that's how I, like to lead. But then they're like, Josh, you can't do the tax return this year. You're like the CEO. Like, no, I can do it. I don't think anyone can do it better. and they're like, no, but your time is more valuable, right? So the second thing I would have said is, I think I met a lot of CEOs and founders while I was at Ernst Young, and it was completely the opposite personality of how I was brought up, going back to my mom, right? Again, super tight, super grateful. Everything about it was fantastic. But if you asked me to go give up this corporate job and take a founder's position, you're crazy. That would have been absolutely nuts. Do you remember the show, Seinfeld?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so there's a character.
Super popular show.
Super popular show, but I'm sure there's some 20s and 30s and zillennials that are listening to this going, what is he talking about? So look up this show called Seinfeld. There's a character named George Costanza.
Of course.
He was kind of like the woe is me, I'm a loser, sort of everything's bad, the sky is falling. And there's this one episode, I loved it. Absolutely my favorite episode, where he goes, if everything that I've done in my life, every decision I've made to this day, right, has been the wrong decision, then everything opposite must be the right decision, right? That was the premise of the entire show. So he goes and he's, there's some funny incidents. He was sitting at a coffee shop, as they always do, right, the characters, and he orders as usual. And he goes, no, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to order a salad, iced tea, and whatever, wheat bread or something. And the opposite, everything opposite, like no fried foods, no nothing, right? And literally this girl turns around at the table next to him, and she goes, hey, that's what I ordered, right? And they start talking, and he says, go talk to her. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk to this girl. Because opposite, his friends are egging him on, opposite. So he does, he goes up and talks to this girl, and he's describing, hey, nice to meet you. And he goes, I'm unemployed. I live with my parents, right? And, I have, absolutely no, and the girl is like, wow, that's literally the most honest thing someone's ever said to me. And asks for his number, right? The opposite. Or at the very end of the show, he's interviewing with the New York Yankees. George Steinbrenner in the shadows comes up to him, says, hey, George, nice to meet you. And he goes, again, opposite. I wish I could say the same, right? But you've turned our beloved Yankees into a laughing stock of the league. And he goes off on the owner of the Yankees. And at the end of the rant, the New York Yankees goes, or George Steinbrenner goes, welcome to the Yankees, give this man a job, right? Completely the opposite. And so I think the other thing that was, to your question about entrepreneurship, I saw people who were like, hey, let's do this company with imperfect data. You can't do that. Like, you need to have all the information. What are you talking about? So I literally had to do everything the opposite. And I was like, you know what? I can't be at Ernst Young. I was trying to do, some side hustles while I was at Ernst Young, probably those 5 years that my wife talked about. So again, opposite. I'm going to leave, not have a job, not know what I'm going to do next, right? And, opposite, right? Looking at, building something without proper funding, opposite. Let's just do it, right? And so that was the hardest part in changing my whole paradigm.
So I'd like us to focus on when you decide to do Ardius.
Okay.
Because I'm wearing the socks you gave me, by the way. These are Gusto socks
That's
that
it.
ended up
That's
acquiring Ardius. So I want to kind of spend a little bit of time at the precipice, the moment in which you decide you're going to start Ardius.
Yeah,
what was the inspiration,
Uh-huh.
and kind of how did you think about that?
Okay. So a couple of things. One, I appreciate the socks.
Yep,
That's great.
Thank you.
And I too am wearing a Conductive Ventures vest.
Yep. As am I. I'm wearing.
And I want to just bring up the fact that Carey has always loved vests. So this is
Love
not.
vests. Love
Yeah.
vests.
I mean, if you look at the number of vests in your wardrobe in
Lot of vests.
college, a lot of. I think it was the majority actually.
Love vests. I like my arms free.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
You haven't changed.
Yeah.
But okay, so the beginning and the origins of Ardius. So I'm going to start by saying at the venture studio level, right after I started figuring out a couple of things. One was that, I mean, there's a lot of things that go on with venture capital, venture debts, startups. But at the end of the day, my whole thesis is that there's only 4 outcomes to a startup. I think you actually taught me this. So one, it goes IPO. Two, you get acquired. Three, it's a lifestyle business. And the fourth, a very real one, is you go bankrupt. Raise enough money, have enough down rounds. So these are, I mean, there's a little bit everything in between, but at its basic core, there's these four, right? So the latter two, we don't need to raise capital, right? Obviously, no, I don't hope no one goes bankrupt or goes under. But if it's a lifestyle business, that's great, right? So it leaves us the other two, going public or getting acquired. And so I'd done the going IPO thing with a lot of my clients at Ernst Young. And that was fun, learned a lot. But on average at that time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 8 to 15, 20-year-old company with millions being spent on the preparation of the IPO, getting it to that point where you had momentum to go IPO. So it left us with the acquisition, getting acquired. So, we were lucky enough in our venture studio to have a couple of companies get acquired. And I was like, this is awesome. This is the funnest part of any startup, is to get this money or get a check back, right? And celebrate with everyone on the team, the investors. We all win. So I know it sounds really silly, and this is why, maybe the resiliency or having a different paradigm of optimism. But I was like, why don't we just do this part all the time? Why don't we just get acquired, right? He laughs, Carey laughs, and every VC will laugh because it's like saying, oh, why don't you just use an upside down ketchup bottle? Because once you hear it, you're like, yeah, duh, right? But no, seriously, I was like, oh, this is the funnest part. I didn't see that part when we were going IPO. I took a lot of time and a lot of effort. Ernst Young, service providers made a lot of money too, right? But as the founder and as the team, as an investor, we all made money at the exit. So I was like, why don't we just do that? And people were like, yeah, Josh, that'd be a great goal, but that's not how it works, or that's not as easy as it sounds. So again, going back to resiliency, like, well, why not? Has anyone tried? And you would get, do you remember this? It wasn't even a pitch deck. They were business plans back in the day, right? On Microsoft Word, probably 60, 120 pages long, right? You flip through it. And so you'd get to this one section where it was like, here's how we're going to exit, right? And I was always looking at that, right? It was like, oh, here's how we're going to go IPO, or here's who's going to acquire. So I was like, oh, that's great. But it was always this either one slide. I mean, we see it even today, right? One slide out of 12 slides. And you're like, oh.
I think it's a very common question for investors. It's like, if you're not going to go public and be an independent company, who ends up buying you?
Sure.
So it's a very common question.
It's a great question. Yeah. It's a fantastic
Who's going to
question.
buy you at the end of these 3 to 5 years, for example? Yeah.
I have no problem with that question. I think it's a good question. So when I asked it, right, the answer was bizarre to me. Well, these companies, it's one slide. I'm like, have you talked to them? No, you can't do that. We haven't built it yet. We don't even have, they're going to crush us. This is our secret sauce. So that answer to me was unacceptable. It's like, and maybe this is why working backward in a traditional sense helped. So at Ernst Young, had access and a network that I'd be very proud of. 12 and a half years, albeit in LA, Silicon Beach, right? But my network was great. And we eventually merged with the Pacific Northwest. So I knew people in all these companies. And so when these companies were listed on people's decks, I was like, why don't we just go talk? Right? No, again, got a lot of pushback. But eventually it led us to talk to a lot of the founders, a lot of the head of business development people, right? And it was great.
So kind of circling back, how does this lead you to start Ardius?
Okay, so literally we are summer of 2019, 18, and I had two friends in town. One was a friend from church. They were actually one of my students at Sunday school. And we literally had a summer of building. But let me go back to what your question was. How do we start it? I was on the phone with a couple of founders who were interested in asking for more checks. That's how it started. And I was like, okay, that's great. I'll re-up on your investment. But before you do that, and I had seen their tax returns and their financial statements and and trying to assess whether to re-up, I noticed that they hadn't taken these tax credits, and this free money, even maximizing their tax return, which is like breathing to me. And so asking them, hey, why don't you just get this free money, right? And take these credits. So I don't even know what you're talking about. We've never heard of these things. And so the first question was, well, who's your accountant, right? And it would literally be, honey, it'd be someone's significant other, spouse, neighbor. And it was hilarious that they just didn't have someone at that stage to do it. So I thought I would go back to Ernst Young, the Big Four, some friends, they had moved on. You're welcome. I'm going to give you my portfolio companies, right? 20 plus at the time. You're welcome. Kind of like Costco, right? All in a bundle. And they were like, no, thank you. Right. And I was like, what? They're like, Josh, these companies are too small. They're startup. In your equivalent today, it would be a pre-series, seed, pre-seed even. And so they're like, I don't even know how you're going to pay us if we did it. Right. And so there was one company in particular where it was 12 employees, pre-revenue, because they were waiting to get, some sort of approval. And their credit was about 120 grand, right? Pretty good. EY was like, we'll do it for 100 grand. I go, our credit is 120 and you're going to service us for 100? Hey, you're still netting 20. I'll say, okay, that's a good point. So I went back to the company's board. I was like, I found you guys money, it's going to net you 20K. It's going to be some effort, but money's money. And I literally got laughed out of the room. They're like, Josh, we just raised a small seed and you want us to spend how much in tax services? And so I had this conversation while having lunch with these two, I call them millennials, but two friends. And they were over listening to this conversation. And they're, why don't you build something that, that can do this? And I tried to do that before. I don't think it's a good idea. I was an accountant for 12 and a half years. Trust me, it's hard. And like, when did you last try? Was their question. I was like, 10 years ago. No offense, Josh, but that's like dinosaur years, right? Technology's changed. You might want to think. And so they actually ended up that summer building it out. And I remember getting the credits that we actually did. It only worked halfway. It was, again, a 2-3 month. They were in San Francisco. We flew them down.
It's like an MVP, right?
Yeah, they were in K-Town. We put them up it was great. And it worked. And I remember, a call from a mentor of mine. And he was at it was Arthur Anderson, but they became like Anderson Tax. I remember they were over there. And he called me and he was like, hey, I heard you're back in the accounting. This is like the summer. I was like, no, this is a love project at best. I'm just trying to help some of my founders. This is money. And he was like, can I take a look at the software? I would love to maybe use it. Because Anderson was just getting back into the swing of things. They got rid of their audit practice and started building their tax practice. And so I was like, yeah, I'd have at it. And so they ended up, I think the following 3 months, making millions with our software. And that's when the two co-founders I had an intervention with. And they were like, Josh, we love what we built, but we didn't build it, for someone to do it, to make more money. We actually want to just help startups. Sounds very idealistic, but that truly was their whole qualm with, why did we build this? And so I was like, great. Like, what do you want me to do about it? And they're like, we want you to go literally door to door and ask these startups if they could use this. I don't have time to go door to door. I want to try to raise another small, studio fund, kind of a syndicate, if you will. And I was like, but I'll do one more solid. And this is where I reached out to our mutual friends, Mucker, BAM Ventures, a couple of those other ones, UCLA Ventures. I said, they have portcos too. Why don't you just hit them up and see if they need these services too with our software? And so I remember calling, Mucker, talking to Eric, and I was like, hey, I'm going to bring these two kids in. They're going to pitch you this idea about, whatever it is. First time founders, can you let them down easy, if you will. And we had coffee, and 10 minutes into it, Eric they're like, look, we've heard enough. I was like, oh, finally, put these guys out of their misery. He goes, we love the idea. This is great. And I was like, what? Wait, what happened? He goes, yeah, we love this. In fact, all of our companies could probably use this. We'd love to, in fact, we'd love to come in and actually invest. So we literally went off the, railroad tracks.
What's really interesting about this story so far is that it doesn't even, number one, it's not like you started with an exit first in mind. And
no,
second,
we'll get there.
Okay. Second, this almost seems like you kind of fell into it. It was sort of unintentional in a sense.
That part is true. So,
Okay.
So the next question they ask is, we'd love to fund it, but because this is a fintech tax idea, this only works with a tax person, right? And literally the room just went silent, and they looked at me, and I was like, at first, don't look at me sort of thing, but I said I would think about it. And so I remember driving home, again, calling a very supportive wife, and she asked me, how did the meeting go? And I was like, great, except for this one fact that they want me to come on with them. And she's like, nah, I don't think you need to. We've had a number of other exits. We're okay. You had wanted to, spend more time with the family and everything, or just invest. And I was like, that's true. And she said the words I actually said to most founders, which is like, but if you do this, to what end? And this goes back to your question about the exit in mind. I was like, I don't know. And my wife is not a business person. Her personality is more of a business person than I am. But in business principles wise, she doesn't have these like thesis and finance background. But she asked me point blank, what's the end goal? Which is literally like what I ask founders, like, what's the exit? And so that summer we had worked with a number of companies. We had partnered with a number of companies for this tax software. And so again, I took my own advice, eating my own dog food, if you will, and went to these different companies, Gusto being one of them. And we literally asked the same questions and said, hey, what are you guys doing in this space? Because if it's me, so how the credit works, this is maybe a nice plug, but you can take credits like R&D and apply it to your payroll taxes. You may not have tax liability. Most companies don't even have revenue in the startup world,
right.
But they'll have payroll and they'll have payroll taxes. And so you can literally take these credits and offset
Payroll
taxes. So we went to these payroll companies and we said, hey, definitely not the smartest people in the room here. What are you guys doing? Right. And I loved their response. And this is where, again, resilience versus, again, perception, right? They had said, hey, Josh, we are doing it. We actually are building it. And if, I'm you guys, I wouldn't, right? In fact, we would crush you guys, right? With the resources we have. I would, try something else, but love the idea and we're headed, And so again, with self-deprecating humor and maybe having resilience, I say, right, something along the lines of like, that's awesome, right? I'm glad you guys are building it. I would too. And I said something along the lines, can you take one positive criticism? Can you get a better marketing? Because had I found this product, I wouldn't have had to build it or spend a summer trying to do it. And they said, most of them said, hey, we are trying and we are building. And they said the words tax is tough. And I remember saying, I know, I was at Ernst Young 12 and a half years, and just out of curiosity, like what happens now if you can't? I mean, you're trying, I get it. And that's when they said something along the lines of, hey, if we can't build it, we're probably going to have to, buy. If you can't rent, we got to buy. Something along those lines. And I remember walking out of those meetings. And again, my two co-founders were totally demoralized, deflated. First words out of their mouth were pivot. This is great, but let's pivot. I walked out of it like I was walking on the yellow brick road. Because out of those 5 companies we talked to, it was amazing because I was like, all of them are doing the same thing. They want to do this. And if we can't sell or get acquired by number 1, we can go to number 2 or number 3, or better yet, maybe we can even have them.
But your founders are probably feeling very sad because they found this task to be very daunting.
Yeah.
Meaning that these 5 well-funded payroll companies we're already applying resources, both capital and human, at this problem. And what did a not even really funded company like Ardius, why would you win
Yeah,
against these, right? That's
exactly.
kind of what they were
We didn't
thinking.
even have a name yet, Carey. That was the funniest
Okay.
thing. So
Versus
Yeah.
ABC company.
yeah, and so again, going back to resiliency, I was like, oh, this is actually the best news I ever heard. So that gave me the courage to actually, again, leave what I was doing at the time at a venture studio and come back into the startup world as a founder. And so this was very different because for two reasons. One, we actually had two of our biggest competitors. Like we had, again, in the space, I don't think there was many people that had our background, which is like Ernst Young, the person who helped write the regs on some of these code sections in the internal revenue code was actually my colleagues back at Ernst Young. Like we had access to all this information. And so we're probably the best group to actually do this, to our point. But therein lies the whole thing about how we started with the end in mind. So, and I wrote this and I shared this, when we got acquired. We were in a coffee shop in Whittier, California. And I remember this was one of our last meetings if we were going to actually start Ardius or not. And I wrote these 5 companies on a napkin. Gosh, I wish I knew you were going to ask this question. I would have brought it to show it, but I wrote it on a napkin. And I said, these are the 5 companies. One of these will acquire us. And I actually remember, Gusto was on the top of that list. And it was great because when we got acquired by Gusto, I was actually able to share this napkin with, kind of a grayed out area of the other 4 candidates. But I was like, yeah, this was our top of our list. And so we kind of like, wow, people say we manifested it, but I think it was actually like with foresight and strategy, we're like, hey, this would be a perfect fit with the ideal customers being customers like, Gusto and Gusto clients, Gustomers we call them. And so it was a perfect fit from that. So
when you look at the exit, any regrets in terms of maybe we shouldn't have sold, maybe we sold too early? Do you have any of those feelings?
No, because so I think you and I could, if we had a whiteboard, right? If we could plot out what a normal raise looks like in the typical life cycle of a startup, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, you could probably predict plus minus 5-10%, like what that raise would look like,
right,
and at what valuation, right?
So when you sold to Ardius, you had raised how much?
A little over $1 million on a note.
Okay.
About 1.12.
Okay.
My point being is, the reason why I asked this question is we could figure out within each raise how much dilution we were going to get and how much we were going to take. And so my whole premise also of the studio, what the venture studio that I learned about was going back to the exits. It's the funnest part. It's great. And the reason why the acquisition part made sense is for us, we had new companies spin out of companies we invested in.
Right.
And we would literally own 100% of these new companies. And so as we were building these companies, we started getting offers in year 3, 4, 5, right? Could be 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, who knows, right? And most, no offense to the VCs or anyone wearing a Patagonia vest, but they would say, loser, right? 5x, 6x, that doesn't work.
Right.
But guess what? For a venture studio who owned 100%, and we gave out, let's say 10, 15% to the CEO, we hired on a team for another 10, 20%. We literally owned 60, 70% of the company.
Right, it makes sense.
And we knew how much we'd probably end up at each juncture. So when we got offers, it was life-changing money. Mm-hmm. So while the VCs were like 5, 6x, not good, for us, we're like very good because it was actually life-changing money. And so when we had the first, I call them 8 employees at Ardius, I remember sitting down, again, some really good friends of ours, right? And asking them, if you come work for Ardius, how much money would you stand to make? Because, I'm asking them to leave maybe their corporate job, or, give me their next 3 to 5 years of their best professional years of their
Right.
life. And I actually asked them for their number, right? And there were times where I plotted it out on that whiteboard and said, there's no inflection point here where you ever make that with me.
Mhm.
And I said, and we parted ways, shaking hands. You're not a co-founder. Sorry, I'll consider you for the next one. But the rest of them were like, hey, I'd like to make X. And it was on that graph. I was like, oh, I think we could. There's no guarantees, but I believe we will be acquired. And I do believe you will make this, at least. That was my promise to them. And so there came a point when we did get that offer. I just did the math. I went back to the cap table, which, by the way, I don't think many people understand still.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the cap table, did the math for every single person that was on our team, the first 8 to 12 people, right? And it hit their number. And so at that number, I was like, we're done. And so this was 2021. We accepted the offer. And yeah, we got laughed at by a lot of people on the outside. It was like, yeah, you left so much money on the table. Should have gone bigger, right? And for me, it was never about hitting that number. It was also about, making sure that these 8 people got taken care of. But again, having some background in what we do, we actually structured the deal very, very differently. It's not public, but it wasn't just a number, right? I know a lot of people were like, well, how much and how much? Yeah, it's in confidence, but number 2, there was none, because we had so many different levers that we still don't actually know what the total value of that outcome was. But for the 8 people that said yes to coming on board, I wanted to make sure that they were taking care of that, their number was hit. So the funniest part of all that story was the same people that were laughing at us, right? Now come 2023, right, hindsight, when we start going into what I call a silent recession, perhaps, those people are calling us geniuses. They're like, oh, you sold at the apex. How did you know? You're such an Look, I did it, right? It was more luck, more, hey, this is probably going to come down from the hilltops at any point in time. We just weren't greedy, is what I call it. I thought we hit our number. It's fantastic. And so I never looked back, no, and guessed it was great. So.
Your story is very unique and interesting, because I think in Silicon Valley, what's often talked about is pursuing one's passion. And I know you have a lot of expertise when it comes to tax. I don't know if you're passionate about tax, but I know you love saving money. I know you're super frugal.
Yes.
You love it when your clients save a lot of money. But when I hear this story, I'm not sure I hear, oh my gosh, my life's calling was tax. So I'm kind of curious, how do you think about that and square?
It's a really good point.
Following your passion versus following something more practical, which is 12 plus years at E&Y. You clearly had what I would call founder market fit, right? It's not like you're doing a gaming startup, although I know you love games too. But you have this real life practical experience of doing all this tax. So when you go into a meeting and go, hey, I have 12 plus years from Ernst Young, and oh, by the way, I'm going to help you save money through R&D tax credits. That to me makes a lot of sense versus like, hey, I am a founder of a semiconductor company, and now I'm going to help you save money on R&D tax credit. There's sort of a disconnect there.
Yeah, no.
So I'm curious, how do you think about, getting to my original question, passion and then Ardius?
So I got that a lot, actually. So it's a really insightful question. Questions that I don't think you got from ChatGPT, by the way. It's really, really good, insightful questions. So,
none of these questions are ChatGPT.
not even the intro. I was like, what do you put it in ChatGPT?
No, I didn't
totally
think
like
any
you.
of this through
No,
Chat.
you're fantastic.
I wrote this myself.
I got it.
Not even our vice president Robin wrote any of these questions. He didn't even know what I'm going to ask.
So I think in terms of, no, it's a good point. I think, yeah, I got this a lot. Like, hey, you don't typically have the personality of a CPA. No offense to the CPAs, but most of the time CPAs are
You don't.
introverted, maybe risk averse. We like to see risk, but we don't like to run into risk, right? We're good at assessing it or finding it. So you're right. I don't generally have that accountants, like life's calling and whatnot. But I think there was something else about it where it was more of the entrepreneurial founder, building teams and literally coming together with everyone for a common goal, the exits, and finding, and I have a different philosophy right now too. Something that I've been really thinking about after this last exit, which is like sometimes the product is not the product, it's actually the team. The team can actually be the product. So literally the 8 people that were on our team, I literally had the funnest time with them because, getting to know their backgrounds, why they needed this money, the fiscal outcome. My job was to try to get them these outcomes, but not understand why. But for different reasons. One wanted to move back home to be closer to the parents from out of state. Another one had a lot of financial student loan debt. Another one, just a lot of good reasons. And for me, just winning with them, wanting to see them do well, teaching them, it was part of the utility that I got from building, Ardius at the time. And so to the point where even helping our competitors raise their Series A and highlighting them, because their goal was to raise money, venture capital, front page of TechCrunch, Forbes 30 under 30, right? At best, I could be Forbes 90 under 90. I don't know. So
50 under 50.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that wasn't our goal. Our goal was just to exit, and so, but I really fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the people, and I.
Well, I often say it's not necessarily what you do in life, but who you get to do it with.
Yeah, literally, even doing this podcast with you is amazing. I have done podcasts before, right before we started this. I was telling you about it, but this is by far the funnest, and we have 2 bobas.
I know.
Like Carey knows how much I love boba. So
this was more an ode to the fact that we were roommates. We talked about opening up a boba shop.
Yeah,
so that'd be fun to highlight and have some boba.
This is really good boba, by the way.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I think from a founder perspective, and even from a parent perspective, I'm telling my kids right now, like, Dad, what do I want to do? Should I make money? Gotta get good grades. I was like, no, find something that doesn't even feel like work.
So no to the grades and no to the money, but go find something that doesn't feel like
work.
I
thought I'm being cool, being a cool dad. And I wish I had, that freedom or flexibility. Again, having been raised by a single mom, trying to help out with the family, getting, no debt. Yeah, for me, those things were like, oh, go get a master's degree, go graduate undergrad, go get that job at Ernst Young. All that was like, so I think we're trying to give our kids, more freedom, more optionality.
To be fair, your kids have way more of a safety net than you did. Right.
And that's why I think we can afford them that optionality. But it comes across very different, and every kid has a very different general disposition. I understand that. One of my kids thinks by saying that, I'm egging them on, right? Literally thinks like, why aren't you a tiger dad? Like, you don't think I can get straight A's? Like, and it actually motivates him even more. And I'm not trying to play Jedi mind tricks with him. Like, if you want to be a magician, right? And he's like, I don't want to be a magician. I want to make money. But I was getting to the point of forget the occupation for a second, figure out things that you're doing, at school and your group projects. My son started a nonprofit. What are those things that you're doing that you enjoy where you look up at your watch or, the clock and it's 1 a.m. in the morning? Like, oh, I can't believe it's 1 o'clock in the morning. When you're doing something that fun, to me, it's not working. He did troll me one time. And I don't know if he hates me telling the story, but I want to do it here on the podcast. He goes, Dad, if you were really that good of an entrepreneur.
No, he didn't start as bro.
Oh, he did say bro.
Okay, bro.
Bro, he did say that. Bro, if you were that good of a founder and entrepreneur, you would have been retired by now. So he sees me working at Ardius. He says, you would have been retired by now. And I was like, what do you think is the definition of retirement? He's like, the absence of work, right? On the beach, vacationing, not this, right? And I was like, I had that same definition that I thought, financial freedom, financial independent. But son, it's changed. Like this was like company like number 9, right? My definition is totally changed. You could do the beach vacation, do nothing for a month. You're done. It gets really boring fast too. But for me, it's just doing more of what you love, less of what you hate, right? With people you like and under your own terms. That to me is my definition of retirement. And by that definition, I'm, the kids that I speak to and the students, my peers, everyone that I come across, by that definition, if you're doing something you truly like, right, it doesn't feel like work, right? And if you found that, I think you've won, right? And so you brought up comics. Oh, that's amazing. Like I would
hold on.
literally go into
We're
a
going to talk about
comic store.
comics later. We're going to talk about comics later. I want to
Right.
save it for the end. We're gonna get to some rapid fire fun questions.
Okay.
But the last question I have for you, and part of this section, is, there's sort of the East Coast, West Coast rap, right? And there's sort of an LA versus SF way of building companies as well. So I'm kind of curious, as you spent time in LA building Ardius, then post acquisition at Gusto, you've spent time at a SF, SF based, Silicon Valley based, very scaled, highly, raised a ton of money from lots of VCs, kind of scaled venture. What do you think is actually the biggest difference, good or bad, between SF companies versus LA companies?
Well, the first thing is I think everything changed with the pandemic. So the noticeable differences, before and after, I mean, definitely a lot less, if any, anymore, just because of how remote you could be. But prior to that, I mean, everything startup and venture, was in San Francisco, the Bay Area, right? And it's funny because
you mentioned the Mucker guys.
yes,
We love Eric, Will, the whole team there. I actually knew Eric when he was up here.
you introduced me to him,
right?
So yeah,
So, and they built their whole brand about, hey, we're different. We're in LA. We don't care if you went to Stanford. It's okay. We didn't either, right? That was kind of their whole thing. So, but you're saying that the gap has eroded.
Yeah, the gap was definitely noticeable prior to the pandemic, and it's funny again because we'll talk about like the Lakers versus the Warriors, right? We'll talk about the Dodgers and the Giants. I mean, there's team affinity, San Francisco, LA, and I actually kind of took that on as, kind of with Mucker, like, hey, Silicon Beach, SoCal, right? We're here, we're on the map. And so kind of making it fun. Like, I remember Shaquille O'Neal once made up these stories about David Robinson because he respected David Robinson so much. He was like, oh, I'm going to make up a story that he didn't sign my, card as a kid. And then try to dunk on David Robinson. And to the point where at retirement, David Robinson says, why do you hate me so much? He's like, because you didn't sign my card. He's like, I don't even remember that. And he's like, oh, actually, you're right. I remember making that up. And he believed it so much that he forgot that it was actually made up and fabricated. But for the, Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach thing, at that time, when we graduated, why did you move up north?
I love tech.
Yeah, you love tech. And so you couldn't fill a room worth of I love tech, right, at that time in LA. Or if you were going to build a company, you would have to do it here because of the talent, because of the resources, Berkeley, Stanford, education. Anyone that was going to make it in tech, your chances were so much higher here, right, than down south. So there was always this chip on our shoulder, even, and I even felt that got compounded when you moved up here. I thought it was going to be me and you for life in SoCal, right? We talked about, families get together on the weekends. We'll do this barbecue. Hey, see you later. I'm going to go to the Bay Area and become a investment banker, venture capitalist. And I enjoy every single trip. I enjoy being here in San Francisco, no doubt. But there was this shack-like mentality where I'm going to make up stories to try to motivate, having LA be like the hub or, be on par with, San Francisco, to the point where you brought up UCLA, our alma mater, trying to get them to be on if not, even better than, Skydeck and StartX and all these other things. But the venture, I think, there's a lot of firms that are now represented in LA, right? They fly down. We're coming up, and the talent's all like, everywhere. So I think the delta is definitely different. But I do remember it did help the mentality of having LA first. So that round that we did, I tried to find only LA folks first, and then bring in SF, funds later in the thing. But noticeably, the culture is different. right? You could tell they call it what was that recent thing? The founder's mentality, right? It's like
Founder mode.
founder mode. Yeah, that's definitely more San Francisco. Like
Yeah.
we have founder mode, but that's like, hey, you want to go, grab a coffee, let's go to the beach, hang out for a little bit, or let's go play some Top Golf. Like let's hang out.
We do that up here too.
We
We got Top Golf here.
after founder mode and whatnot. But yeah, I think noticeably now it's wherever, whenever. So
All right. We're going to give your brain a little break here. I'm going to ask you 10 or so rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I don't want you to think. I want it to be completely instinctual and reactive. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. What's your favorite color?
green, sea green, actually. Yes.
Wow. Specific.
Yeah, I love sea green.
Favorite fruit?
Lychee,
Favorite animal?
turtle,
Favorite sport?
basketball,
Favorite sports team?
sports team, Lakers,
Favorite sports icon?
Penny Hardaway.
Really?
Yeah, Penny Hardaway.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Carey Lai.
I knew you were going to say that, dude.
No, you probably had it written down there too. I was going to say that. Most famous person. That's a really tough one. Recently or ever?
Ever. I said person you've ever met. It's in the notes here.
David Copperfield.
Oh, you're
Magician.
I know you loved him for so long.
I did.
Do you like spam?
Like the mail or the food?
The food.
Oh, food, yes. Hey, spam email, right? I mean,
I didn't even think about that.
well,
I totally didn't even think about that.
there's a tech show, right? Conductive Ventures.
Gosh. What is the password to your bank account?
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4.
What's the last good book that you read?
Oh. It was a book by John Maxwell about teamwork. Some Irrefutable Laws of Teamwork by John Maxwell.
What was the last good movie you saw?
Actually, the Bible, if you consider that a book.
Okay. Well, that's many books.
That's true. Many books on the Bible, yeah.
What was the last good movie you watched?
Oh, man. I hate to say, like, it's top of mind as the most recent one, but like the Thunderbolts or New Avengers. But I mean, it had to be Endgame. Like back in the day, that was like the best movie. But Thunderbolts, because there was such a long lag between Endgame and Thunderbolts, so.
All right. What's your favorite podcast other than Conductive Conversations?
Oh, this is a free commercial you're giving someone. So, I mean, if you take Conductive Ventures out,
Conductive Conversations.
You take that out, I mean, that there's a far number two.
Who's
number two? Is
a lowly number two.
Lowly number two is a podcast called Startup Therapy. These two guys, it's almost though I'm sitting in the room and they're just ranting about startups, but they pick topics.
What's an example?
Like they said, like, hey, founders don't understand cap tables. And we host this thing every week called Exit Hours, or every month at our office. We invite startup enthusiasts to come in. And the number one thing I noticed outside of not knowing what qualified small business stock is, 83B elections, I'm getting taxi and nerdy here, right? But what I was really shocked on was they don't understand their cap table. And I blame my good friend Henry Ward over at Carta for making this so accessible and so easy. Shout out to them, but backhanded compliment. They've made it so online that no one really reads it or understands it. So they're like, oh, my cap table is super clean, Josh. I own 80% of the cap table. Oh, great. But then we start digging into it from, maybe an investment perspective, due diligence. I go, what about this note? It hasn't converted yet. And then there's actually a pref on it. It's like, actually it's a 1.5x, not just one. And there's another one on top of that that's 2. And then you end up finding that this founder only had like 22%, 28% or something. And I can't understand and so they would rant about founders and cap tables and how important it is. And so I was like, these two guys, again, I forgot their names, but amazing. And I'll pick their podcast apart to use it for conversations at Exit Hours. So.
Okay. What is your go-to for downtime?
Can I say it now or no?
Of course.
Can I say comics? To go to the comic store?
Yeah, but we can't talk about it until the
Okay, but going to the comic book store.
Okay. What would you eat for your last meal?
Well, boba would be the drink. That's considered.
That could be part of the meal.
Yeah, and my favorite, it's a Cantonese dish. It's like the beef.
You say it in Cantonese, dude.
Gong chao.
Dry fried beef noodles.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be my go-to with a good cup of boba.
Okay. What did you eat for dinner last night?
Oh, not good. Carl's Jr. at LAX.
That's a far cry from this
man.
beef stir fry noodle.
I almost made it in time for Panda, and they just closed. And right across from it was Carl's Jr. And Carl's had closed, and all they had were fried onion rings. So I'm pointing at Rob.
What's something you did as a kid that you no longer do anymore, and maybe wish that you did? Because it sounds like you still go to the comic book store. So
Oh man,
can't mention that.
What did I used to do as a kid that I no longer do? Oh, I used to perform magic. Because again, going back to the David Copperfield reference,
Yeah.
I thought it was the funnest thing before I knew that, behind the tricks. So I don't do it anymore. Have a couple up my sleeve for my kids. But
You don't
that's
think
about it.
pulling off exits is like magic?
But if you know the secret behind the exits, you see behind the curtain and it's not as magical anymore. But yes.
All right. Getting back to this, the next set of questions
Good fire off questions though. That's good.
Hey, none of this was on ChatGPT.
I can attest
All right.
as your former roommate. Yes.
Okay. So the next group of sections are just entrepreneurial based questions. So
Okay.
I would like for our listeners to just absorb kind of your entrepreneurialness,
Okay.
if you will, your aura.
The spirit. Okay.
Yes. And if any entrepreneur, I think about if I were an entrepreneur kind of growing my company, learning from others,
Mhm.
like what would someone like you say? So
Okay.
the first one is, which entrepreneur do you look up to most and why? And what did he or she teach you?
Okay. So the first one is just because he's close friends with us. Is Kevin. He was the first one I think we met.
Huh?
So Kevin Chu, he's like founder of 5 companies. I don't even know which one to pick, but you pick.
Okay.
And
What did
Yeah.
he teach you?
it's that entrepreneurship is accessible. It was one thing to know
So
that other people did it.
So having
But
met
it's
him
another-
back in the day in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
when he was just regular Kevin,
Regular Kevin.
then
Can I tell you a funny story about Kevin first?
please.
So I think it was our freshman year, and I don't know why, on what weekend I went home, but I was looking through my old photos. There was this picture of me and Kevin. I gave away the punchline first, but senior year of high school, he and I both were recipients
I know this story.
of the McDonald's scholarship.
I remember this story.
But, so we were told to go, attend this banquet to receive our award. We would be interviewed by like local television news and to come very formal and dressed up. And there was only one guy, God bless his heart, that came in I think it was his polo shirt for his tennis team, if I'm not mistaken, or some sort of regular.
he was on his high school tennis team.
It might have been that shirt with some jeans. And they were like, and everyone was like, hey, who's the guy in the blue jeans? I was thinking, you know what? I'm actually jealous. This guy wants to be himself.
So
He's probably the most comfortable one of us all, right? And again, not knowing the connection, for some reason that weekend, I went through the photo album when I was at home. And as I was going through the photos, I saw Kevin's picture. And then there was another gal that we went to college with who was in there too.
Who?
Connie Chen was in there too. She was also a recipient.
wow.
I got to send her this podcast now. She gets a shout out.
Can you just take a photo of that photo? And
Oh, I'd
then
love to.
We'll stitch it back
I would
into this.
love to.
Yeah. We'll stitch it. We'll make it a moving photo. Rob.
Unless Kevin wants to bribe me to not send it in and give me, shares of his next new company like that. But I have to send that. But yeah. So knowing Kevin and then knowing him as your roommate. By the way, have you noticed the trend with your roommates? Like, I think that's an amazing fact pattern. Maybe you could say that, it's they're founders, entrepreneurs, investors. Yeah, but maybe they're all connected through you.
Or maybe I can only book people onto this podcast who are my former roommates.
Maybe, and I'm sure they'd be glad.
We're gonna have
in a
to
heartbeat.
expand the guest list.
But if you want a successful career in VC, or you want an exit, or you want some sort of successful startup, I think you need to have Carey be your roommate, even for one day. One day it'll work. It'll be Carey Lai's roommates. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, too funny.
It's true though. Don't you see the regression? Like there's an actual pattern.
That's really cool, because I feel like in Silicon Valley, when you think about what started in this area, I remember when I was in my first job at IVP, one of the founders said to me that so when you think about some of the more foundational companies in Silicon Valley, like HP, Hewlett Packard, it was the fact that one of the engineers decided to start their own company. And it was the guy in the next cube that would say, shoot, John did that? Dang, I could do that. And so I think this fact that you saw Kevin as just a regular guy, and then him becoming super successful as an entrepreneur, doing it, you're like, hey, I knew that guy before he did that, before he achieved all that. Maybe it kind of gives you that confidence to go try it. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, our circles had a lot of, again, I think you guys, just the domino effect. One impacted the other, right? So, yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you think entrepreneurs make most often, other than not being able to read cap tables properly?
So, well, I think that they're taught one way only, which is, hey, you need to raise money, you need to raise venture capital. The end goal is the accolades of getting, again, these awards, Forbes 30 under 30 sort of thing. But and I'll say this, as I visit a lot of colleges, I've taught a lot of classes. When I ask, why do you do entrepreneurship? Why do you want to do the startup? The answers I get are always about passion. Like, I would love to disrupt this. I want to be innovative. I want to.
How many say I want to make a lot of money?
Zero. None. No, I've never gotten one answer where, like, Mr. Joshua, I just want to be rich. I want to be filthy rich. And that has never come up, not even once. And so, I asked them, I go, that is one of the premises. Like, I talk about cash versus equity, right? Being, we do this for a reason, right? That comes along with it. And if that is the case, and if that caveat is actually a true statement, then we need to understand the cap table. We need to understand the repercussions and consequences of taking an investment. Like, again, we had two really big competitors to Ardius. And I remember one raised 10 million at a post 100. And another person raised 60 at a post 500 within 4 months of each other.
And you had raised 1.2 on a note.
I hadn't raised yet at all.
Oh, okay.
But I remember people calling me, much like they do right now. And they were like, oh, you just got dunked on, Josh. I go, what happened? Like someone had died or something. Because, oh, well, so-and-so raised, money. Like, you're supposed to be the guy that has, this in the back pocket. But they went first. So now they get all the, TechCrunch, VentureBeat, whatever, right? I was like, oh, but that's great. I actually called those founders because I knew them and congratulated them. I was like, hey, that's great. But think about 10 at post 100. Like, at that time, that's great. But where do you go from there? Like, what's a 10X look like from that juncture? A billion?
So what's happened to those two companies?
One actually ended up breaking the company out of parts, right? And then the other one, went from I think 250 people down to 9, and then ended up selling it off for parts to something else. But again, at that time, I was happy for them. That's all they were taught. So one was, an entrepreneur that was, an ex-FANG, you call it, right? And that's all they knew. So when I asked them, why did you do that? They were like, oh, that's what I was told that was next. Versus someone sitting down saying, hey, if you raise, this is the dilution. And at every juncture, whether you call it series A, B, or C, there's probably someone, maybe PE, maybe one of those strategic suitors we talked about, that could probably acquire them, right? Whether it be for strategic reasons, acqui-hire, asset sale. there's probably some optionality on the table that nobody told them about, right? And so that's all I'm asking is that, you know, if you're going to go through this process, sit down with someone and go through this. But they're come back to me every time, and it might be valid. It's like, well, who do I talk to? It's not like I don't have grit. I have grit, but I don't even know what questions to ask. So when you talk about, well, how do I get the first X number of million tax-free? Like, what is qualified small business stock? I kind of joke, you know, and poke fun at the Patagonia vests again.
Oh no, we love QSBS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. You ask anybody that has a Patagonia vest on what QSBS is, right? They will literally probably recite it verbatim. You ask all the founders in any given exit hours in my office, they're like, what kind of BS are you talking about? Like, right? And it's like, no, this is one of the most important. I had a company come in, Carey, literally want to share with excitement how proud they were to get an offer and say, I'm going to, you know, maybe get acquired. And they tell me the story and they're like, look at this term sheet. We're so proud of ourselves. I was celebrating with them and they said, but we're not going to take it. We can hold out for a little bit more. So how much are you holding out for? I said, we're going to hold out for this. Okay, I'm not mad at you. Like, it's your company. Do what you want. I just wanted you to have optionality to know that you could before you pull this, you know, next raise. And I was like, well, out of curiosity, how old is the company? Because, you know, we do their R&D tax credit. And so we know, I was like, isn't it about 4 years? And they're like, 4 years and 7 months. 4 years, 7 months. And so for those who don't know, QSBS starts what? After 5 years. So I was like, hey, if you delay this sale by 5 months and take the lower amount versus today, them conceding and giving you the higher amount, you're going to, to your point, you're going to net more by taking the lower amount 5 months later.
Yep.
And it's things like that drive me nuts, that as a frugal, thrifty tax person, you know, former CPA person, that drives me nuts.
Right.
And I'm just like, someone should have told you this.
Well, I think credit goes to Steph Curry, who said, it's not how much you make, but how much you keep.
Yes. And to that end, can I tell you a funny story that I actually can point to about this very lesson too? I don't know if you remember this. So I think it was like company number 3 or 4. We had dinner in LA with Mike. And then I remember you asking me, hey, what's going on with this round? I'm like, oh, it's raised. And you had asked me something like, hey, Josh, I noticed every time you raise, it's for growth. And I was thinking the same thing about, oh, you've invested to exit, right? Like, yeah, so what? Like, yeah, of course it's for growth. He goes, yeah, but sometimes you just raise, kind of like Ardius. And, you know, after 15 months, and for us, it was after the 4th month we raised. You don't actually use the money for capital. Do you remember the story?
No.
Okay. So this is great. This is like me pulling out a picture of Kevin. So Carey tells me, you notoriously raise money for growth, but then you end up selling the company before you can even use the money for growth. And I was still waiting for the punchline, or what's your point? And this is my QSBS point, because I was like, what is the point? And you're like, well, why don't you just pay back the money with interest? And I was kind of like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you take money because you're going to convert it into equity. Is yeah, but if you do that, let's say within 6 months, that's not fair. Like, you should just ask for your money back, or pay them back with interest and not convert as an option. And I don't remember the rest of the conversation because I started doing the math on the very first couple. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. That was like maybe 7, 8 figures. And had I not diluted myself.
Right.
So I ran to my lawyer, right? Who, by the way, is no longer my lawyer, but literally was like, this is awesome. My best friend / roommate told me something about the payback clause. And they were like, okay, yeah, we'll put that in. And I was like, Tom Cruise on Oprah's couch when I first heard about this. How come you don't seem that excited? And he was like, well, I've known about the payback clause. We could put that in there, right? And he said something, again, another learning lesson for all entrepreneurs. He goes, Josh, do you think I'm actually your lawyer though? I was shocked. I was like, I know who pays the invoices, right? He's like, no. I get that and I appreciate that, but I'm not technically your lawyer. Like, I'm not Joshua Lee's attorney. I'm actually your corporate legal counsel. And which to protect the shareholders, you're one of them, but that's not my sole job. I was like, well, who protects me? He goes, well, you need a Joshua Lee attorney. I go, another attorney. I was like, are you kidding? And the point being was, he was telling me that this clause supposedly is actually kind of not standard, and it could cause some rift if
it's founder friendly.
It's too founder friendly, and it actually would cause too much risk because some of those institutions, one, wouldn't like it, and two, he actually works for some of those institutions. And so there was this whole conflict where I thought, well, how am I supposed to know this?
I actually do remember now that you've jogged my memory as I get older now, but I actually remember which company this conversation was. I remember the context about it now.
So that's why I feel like in my second, third season of life, I love working with founders, and just, even if it's, you do know about your cap table, let me just remind you one more time. Like, I tell people who have a cap table that's just starting to understand it, like, please print it out. You have Carta, I don't care, right? Roll it up, print it out like a scroll. This is your treasure map. Like, if we're going to go on this 5-year, 10-year journey together, this is the only thing that will matter at the end of the day when you get acquired, or even if you go IPO. This is the only, put it under your pillowcase every month, take it out, open it, and look at it, right? Understand it. And if you have questions, like, please bring it up to someone like Carey, myself. And this is the funniest backhanded compliment again. When I asked you, hey, Carey, how come you didn't tell me about this earlier? Do you remember what you told me?
No.
Mr. Jog the memory?
No.
You're like, oh, I thought you knew, man. Come on. It sounded exactly, hey, I thought you knew, man. And I was like, I didn't know. And it could have saved me a lot of money. And so, yeah. And there was a lot of other things too. Just, I don't know if you get this a lot because you're everyone's best friend. But if someone has a really good idea, they come to you, right? And say, hey, Carey, what do you think of my idea? I'm sure you are as nice as you always are, and you'll entertain it. And there's a lot of things where someone might say, hey, this is not venture backable, right? A lot of things aren't.
100%.
Right? Yeah. Not knowing the mechanics of venture capital is also something else that, now I'm just like really long rants here, but you asked about what founders don't understand. They don't understand venture capital. They know they need your money, but they don't understand how your fund mechanics work.
I agree with that.
Right?
I 100% agree.
There's a reason why when you deploy money, you need that 10x at a minimum, right? To make it work. I had this argument with Elizabeth talking about Hustle Fund. She was like, your venture studio model doesn't work, like exiting at 5, 6x. I go, it works for me just fine. She's like, no, because you're an evergreen fund, you can redeploy that money.
Right.
But I can't. I got to put it back and return it back to the LPs. And just even getting educated through real life situations that we're talking about, like, I think it's so crucial that if they came to you with an idea that could, with those numbers, with each raise and the potential outcomes, whether it's IPO or acquisition, and that you get your multiple, they get theirs, they would literally have a more big understanding, I guess a better understanding of what they ask or they're asking.
Yeah.
Because they otherwise are like, not venture backable. I'll show you. Like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what you were talking about back then because I didn't understand the fund mechanics.
I may not have even understood what I was talking about. That's probably true.
This is just like when we were roommates. This is awesome.
What characteristics do you think make a great entrepreneur? And why do you think entrepreneurs typically make bad employees?
Oh, the second one's a good follow-on. I think you need to be, people say one quality is like you're a little bit, interesting or crazy. You talked about resilience. For me, it's being it's being optimistic in everything. But I think the quality that I most admire is going back to doing something you don't feel like is work, albeit tax. I mean, that's like, you're right, not the end all be all passion, but whatever we're working on, whatever I invest in, whatever thing I'm building, like, I'm loving it to the point where, like, I'd be willing to get in trouble with my wife for not coming home on time for dinner. It's one of those like promises, like, oh, and you and I are, we're
Yeah, I wonder
dads.
if Joyce is actually going to watch this.
I don't know.
Hear that
She'll
part.
make it this far. Unless Robin edits this and put this in the front. But I think, you and I are dads, husbands, and so on and so forth. We try to keep our commitments. And if there's something where, for example, I'm talking about someone's startup, helping them with their problem, brainstorming about how to scale, I'm having so much fun, Carey, that I look up at my watch and I go, oh man, I was supposed to be home at 6:30. It's now like, 6, and I don't think I want to make it back home with LA traffic.
100%.
And that to me is, again, whether you're a student, whether you're my kids, whether you're a founder or investor, I'm looking for someone who is doing that.
Yeah.
Again, maybe they're not the master of that topic or domain, but you can tell. And I think that's why admiration for Kevin. I don't know if his first company was water cooler or even something else before that. I didn't know if that was his passion or not either. Gaming was a better fit, but you could tell this guy's, it doesn't stop thinking his ideas, and you just knew, and he just enjoyed it. That's what he was going to do. So I think that is the quality. Just like I think you investing and helping entrepreneurs and founders, some days I don't feel like you're even working, and some might even say that of all VCs. Again, no offense, but you actually do genuinely. Every founder that I've met and carried true to his word, it's not just a free swag. You've invited me as your roommate and really good friend to participate in founder events, CEO events. I'm really grateful to get to know your community, just like back in, Hong Kong or study abroad. And you've been great. And talking to all your entrepreneurs, they'll say one thing, right? Whether it's Paul or you, it's like, oh, they go to work. They go to work with me, not necessarily for me, but we'll get in there and he'll roll up his sleeves with his vest on. He'll roll up his sleeves and he'll get the job as though he's like an extension of our leadership team, right? So that's why it's super, super exciting to see you fall into your calling of what you think.
Yeah.
And again, knowing Carey as long as I had, I seriously thought he would be on the founder side. Like we almost.
I am on the founder side. I founded Conductive
That's
Ventures.
so true. That's so true.
What?
That's
Suddenly
so
this
true.
doesn't count?
If there's
Come
one
on.
thing to edit, Robin, please edit this one out. He's absolutely right.
This doesn't count, starting this thing from scratch? Oh my gosh.
No, he's
Oh my
absolutely right.
gosh.
You're right.
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna leave now. That's cool. No, you're absolutely right.
But Josh, I give you 100% credit. I'm going to give a shout out to my dad, Mr. Lai. Hey, just call me John.
Just call me John. Yeah, Mr. Lai.
My dad actually told me when I was really young, he said, there are two very important decisions you're going to have to make in your life, son. He said, the first one is who you marry, because that can really change the trajectory of your life, good or bad. And the second, and he said it's a really close second, is your career, because you're going to spend so much of your time working from the day you graduate till the day you decide to retire. Call it 40 years.
Yeah.
Times a minimum of 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, 2,080 hours a year. That's a long time to do something that you're not interested in or not passionate about. And I remember him telling this to me when I was really young, and I don't know what he was saying. Because when you're 5, you're like,
we're having a moment here, and then I don't remember.
Because when you're 5, you're like, I just want to play tennis.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to become the next Michael Chang, but I don't know. But I think about the advice that you're giving now to entrepreneurs, to your own kids, and it's very similar to the advice that my dad gave me. But I don't think at 5, and then he kept repeating it, as I got older, I don't think I understood. If you think about the context, or a first generation immigrant from Taiwan, who probably did something that he wasn't purely passionate about, right? Comes to this country. You don't hear that advice that much from most first gen immigrants, right?
Yeah.
So I think in many respects, I respect it even more coming from my dad, because it's so progressive.
Yeah.
Because you hear about first gen immigrant parents saying, you have 3 careers. You can choose engineering, medicine, or law. And my dad never said that to me.
Yeah.
Which I respect a ton, because
That's amazing.
I do neither of those. Engineering, medicine, or law.
Oh man. And the third most important decision is who you room with. So
There you go. There you go.
Shout out to Mr. Lai.
All right, here we go. How much luck versus hard work do you think is involved in an entrepreneur achieving financial success, and the emphasis on financial success?
So I think definitely it's a combination of both because, I think we rely more on the former than the latter. So we rely on our talent, our skill, whatever that is. And as most people who are resilient, hey, you're not going to tell me, no, I'm going to build it. I do think luck you have to be cognizant of it. And luck could be a variety of different things, whether it's situational, environmental, circumstantial, right? You call it whatever you want, but I think there's that context that is important. And you call it luck, like luck that we were roommates, luck that you met, Kevin as your roommate and study abroad. So let's take an example from, our last venture. It was it wasn't our first, but it was definitely an interesting exit. First time where I started, built, executed, and exited a startup without meeting a single person in real life. So if you think about what had happened in 2019 to 2021, this all happened during the pandemic, right? And I would not wish this on anyone. I wouldn't even categorize it as luck, but that was the one situation where I don't know if you're going to have an opportunity to build a company during a worldwide global pandemic in our lifetime again. And I pray that we don't. But we were set up in a way where, again, people were saying, hey, this product, this solution, this SaaS, like model you have is not going to work with this. The incumbents at, the big four or these, card companies like Brex and Ramp and, Intuit, payroll company, they're not going to be able to, why would they use this? Right. And the moment the pandemic broke out, everyone was scrambling, right? Do we tell people not to, work from the office anymore? We have to, what was it, shelter in, right? San Francisco, I think, was one of the first. I remember being on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, they just shut down San Francisco. We can't literally leave the city or go out from it. It was crazy. And so while companies were scattered, trying to figure out what we, as a startup, again, call it luck or circumstantial, we were too cheap to get an office. We didn't have an office. We were all.
You borrowed ours before, remember?
Oh my goodness, that's so true.
You borrowed ours. You're like, hey,
true.
can I get a key? I'm like, yeah, you can have a key.
Oh, that's so true. Oh, we should go back and visit for the.
I should have got some shares for that. That's what I should have done.
And he should
get some shares for that.
Well, you're getting shares now, so it's gonna come full circle.
All right.
And literally, I think what was crazy was that actually accelerated everything we did in the last company, because while people were scrambling to get service and to be serviced with we had software.
Yeah.
We were all remote and we just shot up like a hockey stick at that time. So there's that, hey, you got to be present. You have to do the homework. You have to be present. At the same time, being aware of your surrounding. Like, I think you talk to a lot of founders who, I think we had people who did fantasy sports 10 years before fantasy sports. And we're like, this is not going to work. We have people who are trying to do like virtual reality, augmented reality,
right?
With things like no one's going to use this.
A little bit too early, but
bit too early. We even had during our time, right? We remember groceries. You're going to have a truck deliver your groceries in front of your house. You don't get to squeeze the, oranges and, pick out your own fruit. No one's going to want this. No one wants some stranger coming to your house, picking food. And now it's like, it's commonplace.
Yep.
Right. So
100%.
Can you imagine starting a company like that back then? Right. I mean, it was almost impossible. So
do you think it's necessary for a founder to have a technical degree when founding a tech company?
Oh, well, that's changed completely just in the last 6 months with vibe coding now and everything else going on. So no, I don't think so. I mean, that whole accelerator model where you have, one, non-technical person, right? And then one technical. One thing I did that did surprise me a lot was at a bigger company, to your point, was just how many like roles and very niche job positions there are. The bigger you go, the more, right, there's a position for that particular function, right? Like, I remember doing my first couple of startups and thinking nothing of it, but, in a later startup, someone was like, you need to hire a head of product. Why? Because again, Josh, you can't keep, doing what you're doing. I was like, am I the head of product? I was just telling you what to build. Yeah, that's head of product, right? Is oh no, but I know the demographic the most, the users. Yeah, that's also, that's prioritization. Yeah, we need some. And so I was like, in my first couple of startups, it was just me and a developer. So it would have been hard for one and not the other.
Right.
Maybe more on the technical person that could, if they had that skill set, could build it. But the best times were just, again, a non-technical and a technical. I think that's a great combo. That's why, but more and more, I think that's going to converge into, but again, whether or not, that's permissible but beneficial or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But I do know that I offended a lot of product people, and I apologize, on this podcast, that I didn't know what they did because
I know your product people are your favorite. So
yes, they are. Now they are.
how do you, and maybe this is easier in LA, although you just talked about sort of the eroding gap between LA versus Silicon Valley. How do you block out the noise of the things that you mentioned before? You talked about how some of your competitors were getting on TechCrunch, were making Forbes, et cetera. How do you actually block out that noise and stay true to being different and being okay with being different?
Yeah, it's very similar to that other question, and I think it's more for the team. For me, I'm over it. Like I feel like, again, after the pandemic, I think we're more of a global, sort of ecosystem where, again, having investors up north, having a team down south, or a plane ride away, one maybe Zoom call or Google Meets away, that's fine. So I think it's more for the team, the newer founders especially. Again, and I think it's maybe a endless cycle where if they don't have a conversation with someone they trust, I can't ask my investors because, what will they think of me asking about exiting? Are they going to be paranoid that I'm trying to exit? I can't ask my team that question because, yikes, like they'll think I don't know how to lead. And so, again, being more democratized in that information is I think going to dissipate that gap. But I do have team members that still fall in this gap of, hey, do we need to move to the Bay Area? Do we need to go to San Francisco? And or maybe it's, do we need, a brand name like A16, or do we have to, get Conductive to, to be the lead? Like that all helps. I don't disagree with any of that. And I think that is certainly a pathway, and it does come with all the benefits.
It's interesting you put A16Z and Conductive in the same sentence. So
I
appreciate that.
If nothing else, I probably should have reversed that order.
There we go.
Exactly.
There we go. I'm curious, how do you think being an Asian American CEO founder, do you ever feel like you were at a loss?
Oh yeah. Even let's go back to starting out at Ernst Young. It's just seeing other people that are like you. This goes back to even seeing our friend Kevin, who happens to be Asian as well. Like there's a lot of barriers that, and this, whole thing about seeing more people like yourself, I think that's very true. Right. And until it matters to you, it doesn't until it does. So for me, now having 3 daughters, for example, I'm all about like trying to make sure that they get represented, have the same opportunities, as before. Like I was always supportive, right? And I would always go to bat for my, female colleagues as an example, but I don't know if I truly knew what that meant. It was more just my personality, general disposition as a friend. But now having a daughter, it's like, oh, that's literally almost like me, right? And so being Asian, yeah, I was in different rooms where I felt like I didn't belong. And that could be like everything from physical appearance to,
Drinking boba.
I literally introduced this drink to a lot of my American colleagues who had never had it. Like some loved it, some, I forgot to tell them there was tapioca balls on the bottom.
They're choking.
They choked or they spit it out, and or taking them to dim sum, right? And say, hey, Josh, it's your turn to pick. And then ordering, something that's like totally exotic, like, chicken feet. And they're like, whoa, they wanted the full experience. So I tried to give it to them. And needless to say that, but those things were different, very different. And
Robin loves dim sum.
Robin's amazing, right? So
Robin loves dim sum.
And so, yeah, you should be on the couch too.
He should.
So literally, it became a part of life where it was like, oh, I'm gonna have to. And again, this goes back to the whole Seinfeld reference. I tried to do my general disposition: say nothing, right? Put your head down. Self praise is no praise, right? I'm gonna try to interject at least X number of comments to make sure I mattered, to make sure I was in the meeting minutes, to make sure. And so to be the loudest person in the room, right? Again, not because I thought, but it was more for me to say, hey, I want to make sure that not only they felt I belonged, but I felt that I could. And I also think it mattered because now that we're older, we're in a position, again, having just been very empathetic of having lived that, now we can bring alongside, others, regardless of what that is, whether it's, the Asian thing or, single parent thing or any other characteristics that we can just cross intersect. I just want to make sure we're mindful, right, that no one gets like left behind in that sense. Right?
I don't think you and I have ever chatted about this, but I feel like as I get older, and now I'm in my 40s, I just care less about what other people think. Do you share that same feeling?
Yeah, I got actually in trouble with my teams. I said the phrase, I don't care. It's so it's just so flippantly said. Like for me, it's just a phrase, right? But some folks maybe misinterpret that. Oh, Josh really doesn't care, And to a certain extent, to your point, it just means I'm not as mindful, or I'm not going to let it stress me out. Is what I'm trying to say to them. Like, oh, but what about this? What about them raising more money than us? It's okay. Like that's not our goal.
Right.
Our goal is to repeat after me.
Yeah.
Right. Exit. And or something else. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Maybe it's age, experience, or just too tired for it to actually.
Well, I definitely don't care as much. I think I cared more when I was younger, especially earlier in my career, about what other people thought of me or their impression of me. And now I'm more like, I think maybe it comes with being more established in your career, where I feel a lot more confident, a lot more certain of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And so I care a lot less about what people think. I'm more like, hey, this is me. And if you don't like what I'm doing, that's cool. I already have, friends like Josh and others. So I don't need you to like me because I know where I'm headed. And
so this question is going to be edited out for sure. So someone came up and asked you today, hey, what ethnicity are you now? What are you going to say?
I always say I'm Taiwanese American.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Shout out TP. All right, cool.
Okay, so we're gonna round it, kind of bring this home.
Okay.
Okay.
Stretching the round corner, last corner.
How do you think success has changed you?
How has success changed me? I'll tell you first how it hasn't changed me. I think I'm still as frugal as the next person. I think where it has changed in littler things, I guess, like that I think are for the positive. So I'll give an example where I think my frugalness may have been the source of some conflict sometimes with my wife. Like I'll go for the discount over the practical or saving time. And so I'm more likely to give that battle up to win the overall war, which is like, hey, it's okay.
You're at war with your wife?
Well, over the saving money part, yeah, I'd be like, hey, I think we should, go for this layover because it's going to save us a couple $100. And she'll be like, yeah, but it's going to take, 4 hours of our vacation time, which could have led. And I was like, oh, okay, but I'd rather have the $400, right? So giving that up
times 6 in your case.
Yeah, in times 6, with 4 kids. So I think those things I'm a little bit more lenient on, and it's so to be, and I find it like harder to enjoy. So I don't think I've changed my lifestyle at all.
Okay.
But I do. It's changed in a positive way where it's helped me.
Yeah. So you're wearing the free swag, so that hasn't changed.
No,
it's just higher.
I think my entire wardrobe, by the way, is just a free swag.
I know. My wife has said I need to step up, like stop doing that, especially like going to nice dinners. I have to wear real clothes.
I actually think it's a sign of support to the startups that we work, with and for, and wearing Conductive. Like I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
It's actually something that's like one of one of 100 maybe. Versus
We didn't
that
make
thing on the
100.
road.
We didn't make 100 of those vests, so no.
Oh, even less.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's even more precious that, I was chosen to be given this vest, so for me, it's even more valuable versus like what a tee or another shirt that's like mass produced.
Right.
So I know I'm rationalizing, but
Okay. It was
Yeah.
the last one in that size, and we said Josh would fit. That's how we picked.
that's amazing. Thank you.
All right. Do you think the definition of success has changed over time for you? Like if you think back to when you first graduated out of UCLA and you had this definition of success, and now that you're 46, and do you think that term success has that definition changed in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's similar to retirement.
Okay.
Do you remember late nights at
Totally.
UCLA?
Totally.
Thanks, bro. UCLA, we talked about, hey, was there ever a number
Yes.
where if you ever achieved it,
I remember
you
talking
would
about this.
retire?
I totally remember.
And I remember saying yes. Because I calculated at that time I was single, but I was saying,
You mind sharing what that number was back then?
back then it was 2 million was my number. Or maybe 3 million, 2 or 3 million. Net taxes, of course.
For all the younger people, inflation adjusted, that's probably like, what would that be today? And today's for the zillennials.
No, I still think it's.
Oh, you think? Oh, okay. So not inflation adjusted.
Okay, so
You graduated in 2000.
I had this talk with another founder recently, who was eating into their savings account.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what did you expect? Right? We were going to start a company, and he was really anxious and nervous, and he had just taken his family on a really nice vacation. In fact, with all the stuff that we put his family through, I was like, double the budget, triple the budget, just reward them for going on this journey with us after one of our exits. And that month or something, he was like, oh, I ate into my savings. I was like, you're paying off your vacation from last summer, this month. Of course you're going to eat into it. He goes, yeah, but just seeing it go into the red, like, makes me super nervous. And I was telling him, wait, hold on. I have an idea, a good idea of what, you have in your bank. At even a 5-10% return on interest or a little investment, right? I know how much you're making on that interest. So I was like, let's take a number of how much you spend. I encourage all the founders listening to do this. How much do you spend a month? For him, it was his wife and a family of 2 kids, so family of 4. And he was telling me, I spend anywhere from 10 to 15K. And that lifestyle will change, but somewhere between 10. So I said, let's do 10,000 a month for 12 months. That's 120 grand. And I'll round up or down, but let's call it 120 grand. And again, life expectancy, right? I hope we live another, call it 30 years. If we're good. I don't want to be morbid, but
you don't think it's longer than 30?
40 then? Just pick a number. So 40 times 100. 50? Okay, 50 then.
Dude, my grandparents lived to 130.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah, you're right. So 50 times 100K, right? A given year. I mean, you're looking at what? Is that 5 million?
Yeah.
So if you do nothing wrong, I told this founder, and I know, again, you're okay at if it's 3, 5, whatever the number was. If you do nothing wrong and don't spend frivolously something or lose the entire thing, you already made everything you need. Minus inflation. Good point. And so I feel like I've never changed my lifestyle.
2 mil.
Oh, I think 3. Yeah, 2, 3 million.
Oh, now 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I up it $1 million? That's 50% increase. So, but if you look at it that way, I mean, what do you really need to hit? But some people don't have a number, and I think they just some is good, more is better. But when are you going to stop, Carey? I think you're, again, going back to you.
I don't have a number.
And you never have. And that's why we stayed up till like 4 a.m. in the morning talking.
I don't have a number.
But it does help in terms of like, feeling anxious, feeling the freedom, right? To know you're not going to be homeless. So
Hope
to
not.
that end,
Hope not.
I think that's all you need to know, right? To that end.
Okay. What would you tell, if you could go back in time and you were talking to the 10-year-old version of yourself?
10 years old.
Yeah, so you're 10 years old. What would you tell 10-year-old Josh?
Invest in a company called Google. It's like getting the almanac from Back to the Future. So that's like my 10-year-old daughter who's in 5th grade. That's a 5th grade. So the 5th grade, Joshua had, well, number one, my dad passed away when I was in 6th grade.
Right.
So 5th grade, I would, you couldn't have known this, but since you've given me the authority to have a DeLorean to go back in time, I would first tell him, spend as much time as you can with your dad, our dad, and never take that for granted. So, which is true of any of us. A quick tangent, we have a high school friend, right? Exited huge, super big, and in the billions, and just recently passed. Same age, and so for me, it was like, oh, if you have all this money and you made it successfully, you're supposed to be guaranteed 50 years left to enjoy that. But he recently passed. So number one, I would tell my 10-year-old, if dad's going to pass away, make sure you spend as much time with your dad. Number two, grades are not everything. I think I was such a nerd. I think I was gunning for the straight A's. I was, trying
You're a good student. You're a good student, man.
Yeah, you could not have gotten me to, and I regret this. This is a regret. I literally regret not taking those side trips during college. Hey, let's take a road trip to Santa Barbara, to San Diego, to Vegas. I would have done it. I was like, no, I'm too busy doing homework, right? I'm gonna, not study abroad, right? And I'm gonna graduate early, go to grad school because they paid for it, and I was sponsored, and like everything else came to fruition, right? Came back to today, converged into startups. We have plenty of time to work, and so I would have told him to take his time, not be such a nerd. But that's who I am, right? That led to being an accountant. That led to my personality, being a good accountant, and then obviously leading to being a founder, and then telling him the advice we've been talking about, just doing something you love and trying to make a career out of it.
All right, this is the last question before I get to my last question.
Then that's not your last question.
Exactly.
Okay.
What does legacy mean to you? And how do you hope people will remember your work?
Let's say it one more time. How does what?
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy.
And how do you hope people remember your work?
So from I think that there was no dichotomy between Josh, the, investor, founder, startup guy, and Josh, the family person. Like, I just love people. I love, my family. I think this is all like one thing. I don't think I have. So instead of work-life balance, I think it's like work-life harmony. So that legacy of modeling what it is to enjoy my definition of retirement, which is you can do what you love with people, with people you like, and not have it feel like work. We're filming this on a Tuesday afternoon of all places, in a beautiful setting. Carey's,
this is not my living room, by the way. This
Carey's
is not
living
my
room
living
is
room.
amazing. Carey, you've done amazing things with your house.
I think these are fake flowers. I think.
And I get to have a conversation with my roommate / best friend, doing things that we like. We talk about startups. We're going to talk about your fund, meeting new people, and becoming their friend. And this is crazy. How can we get paid to do this and work? So I hope that would be.
That's what I tell Robin all the time.
I would hope that this is a legacy where people, in terms of remembrance, like I don't look at it more of, some people are like, oh, do you want to leave each kid, with their own house and pay for their college? And I don't even know that part is like.
Yeah, my answer is no.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, there's a lot of
They should
debate.
make their own.
It's a huge debate. So then what do we do with all this? Like, can't take it with you, right? And so that then begs the question, I also would love them to remember.
You should take your roommates on a vacation to Hawaii, fully paid.
I should.
That's what you should do.
I should.
Your former roommate.
I should. I'll model by example.
There we go.
I do know of that. I should have. But yeah, no, I think that's, yeah. And then the other side of it is person of faith, right? My faith is so important to me. Being Christian, loving God. I hope that exudes like everything about me, that it permeates like everything to the point where I've heard people say, Josh, I feel like you're negotiating against yourself. I had this one situation where a founder came, we mapped out, how much equity dilution we're going to take and what the potential exit was. And I sat down with this person and his wife, and I said, hey, that number you talked about, I don't think you're going to hit it with X percent. You would, again, doing the math, you would have to have this. And so they were super confused. They're like, well, what's going on? Like, are we negotiating? And I was like, well, if we are, you're kicking my butt. Because, but I want to be honest, truthful, and to the point where not about the money, not about the titles, not about accolades, but modeling my beliefs, my values, this whole system that, and so, yeah, hopefully that's the legacy that I'd be proud of.
Okay, this is the last question.
Okay.
What is your superpower?
Superpower is actually being a networker of people. So I love interacting with people. This actually was, when I do a podcast, it's me on the other side and getting to know the other person. This has been the longest I think I got to talk about myself. And so you've done such a great job in doing that. But I think I love meeting people where they're at and becoming close and fast friends. So in the startup world, we call that networking, but just lover of getting to know new people. And so I'll go to a networking event and I'll specifically, again, this is my background of being raised by a single mom, or just being shy growing up and then trying to be opposite and extroverted now, which is I go to a room and I try to find someone who is not talking to anybody, who's not in a crowd, right? And being able to identify, just be a one-on-one or one-on small group with a smaller group of friends. That's why I look at some of my closest friends. You're the anomaly. Most of my closest friends are actually very introverted and very, so Carey, you're definitely the anomaly. So my superpower is just trying to become quick and fast friends with most people. But I will add that a mentor of mine told me about the 80-15-5 rule, which is really tough. And I'm still trying to implement it, which is 80% of the people, based on my personality, will just like me, just very flexible, bend but don't break. Like I'm conflict averse too, in most cases. So 80% people will like you. 15 will be unsure about you because they just got to know you, they just met you, you're not sure. And then I've learned that there's this 5% that just do not like you and they hate you. That part bothers me. I'm like, hey, I want everyone to like me. I want everyone to, to get along. And so, but when I meet people or I've met people, even at work, that are that 5%,
yeah,
I would spend 80%, 90% of my attention and my thoughts on the 5%. And my mentor told me, Josh, focus on the 15, right? They're still unsure about you, right? The 80%, dude, they're going to love you, right? And they probably will continue to. But that 15, they're not sure about you yet. Spend time with them and move them over to that 80, right? And this was given to me when I was so focused on that 5%. So that superpower, I think, is also like the kryptonite, because I'm always like, oh, I want to meet everyone in the room. And I like FOMO, like if I go to a networking event, I want to get everyone's business card and get everyone's LinkedIn. And it's like, there's not enough time in the at the networking event or like you said, I just got to have, I don't care. I'm tired. I got to go back and rest.
Well, that's different. My thing about the I don't care is, like I said, it's about what other people's impressions about me.
Yeah.
And so I would say, if you were to apply it to your 80-15-5, which is kind of interesting concept. I don't think I've ever heard it framed that way. I would say, well, yeah, there's some percentage of people that just aren't going to like you.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
And to this day, there's some people
may not like you because you wear too many free t-shirts of repping other people's companies.
That's true.
And you know what? Too bad.
Too bad. Yeah. No.
Too bad.
Yeah.
All right. So I had told all of our listeners that we were going to get back to this one unique thing about you that doesn't really show up on your LinkedIn, which is you are a lover of comics. So something that most people maybe won't attribute a successful tech founder to necessarily, but you love comics, collecting comics, buying comics at really low value finding that comic that's a diamond in the rough that is worth maybe thousands of dollars, but you picked up at a garage sale for 10 cents. You love that so much. What is it about comics? Kind of tell us about your obsession with comics, why you love comics so much. And in the digital age, why do you like paper comics?
Yeah. So fun fact, there was a company that I think ended up becoming Costco. It was called Price Club.
Yes.
And my mom would buy the value pack. Usually comics were about $1 at the time, 50 cents to $1. Come in a pack of 30. And
how old are you?
Elementary school, so third to fourth grade. And I would get this value pack. And back then I would actually read them. And for some reason I just thought, oh, these might be worth something someday, right? Because you hear about like, oh, you're reading Spider-Man. The first appearance of Spider-Man is worth millions. And so I'm thinking, oh, well, this issue, and I kept it pristine. Like I couldn't even afford bag and boards, we call them,
right,
to protect them. I fabricated a, board made out of cardboard. I'd cut them up. I put them in plastic. And the plastic part, I got it from my mom because she would have plastic wrapped everything in our house, from the remote control to the car we were sitting in. The couch you came over.
Stick to your skin in the summers.
Oh yeah, but when you were to resell it, it's brand new, the resale value. But we never got to enjoy the brand new, couch. So it all came. I was like, oh, I'm gonna protect it. So I started collecting it, and I just thought I'm gonna catalog it. And these were so precious to me. And then my mom would sometimes come home from work in Long Beach, and they'd stop off at a Walden Books. Remember Walden Books, which is a physical bookstore of all things. And there was this comic rack, and she would buy these comics, and they had this barcode on it. They would scan it, and they were kind of like a little bit more damaged because it's all I was got mad, but I was fixated on collecting, and so I had all these comics, boxes full. And it wasn't until, I had my son, and then he started watching all these Marvel movies. You remember Marvel movies? Before they became bad. I mean, it's like before Endgame, everything before Endgame. And so one day, my mom was watching, my son, and my son finds these comics. He goes, "What's this?" He goes, "Oh, these are your dad's comics. Tell him to take it home because it's just taking up space here in my closet." So my son starts going through it, and he knows a thing about these characters. And so he started collecting Pokemon, but then comics, man. Comics were the thing. He's like, whoa, you have these issues? You have these characters I've never seen? And so he starts, researching how much these are. And I was telling him like, oh, some of these probably aren't worth anything. I don't even know if they really got protected because I fabricated the boards and the plastic. They're in pristine condition. And so he found something. He goes, Dad, I think this is worth several $1,000s.
What's the most valuable one? I'm curious.
So
because I'm not into comics, so
yeah, no, it was like like a first appearance of a character like Fantastic Four or Daredevil. That's probably somewhere in the 10-figure range, maybe high end, depending on the grade, right? Probably maybe stretch 5-6 figures on that. So
wow, yeah,
I bought myself a nice comic after one of the exits, and as an investment, it's actually pretty. So that's changed. I would have never done that as a kid. Obviously, we didn't have the means, but that just became more fun because me and my kid, got into the comic collecting together. But then after he kind of like wound it down, I kept going. I kept going, and you're right. It's still my personality because it's not good enough to just go and buy that expensive comic. Like right. I'll rummage through the $1 section, the 50-cent section, and ever so often there's a hidden gem in there that's worth thousands of dollars. And it's just like, I remember being in a used bookstore, and someone came in, just offloaded the whole books collection, and they sold the box to the owners for $20. The owner put it out for $1 each, and there was this first appearance of Ahsoka from Star Wars. My son was there; he was proof. We went through it, and we're like, and that was like a couple $1,000. And
so I'll pay $1.
Yeah, we'll pay $1. And so we were like, it's like, son, we got. And we and I were trying to strategize. What if we walk out with just this one? It's too obvious. I go, no, it's fine. It's it's $1. He's going to make all his money back on all the comics in the box. But he's like, no, we got to make it look like, we bought 3 or 4. It's still a good deal, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
It's good strategy.
So it's the same thing with startups. You could maybe tie it back. Everyone on LinkedIn always does this. I collect comics, and here's why it's similar to startups. So finding, comics in the rough, because they're going to be introduced in a movie or
we call it unpolished gems.
Unpolished gems. So I find these unpolished gem comics, and and the funny thing is, my wife will say, "Hey, they're only worth what you say they're worth when you sell them." Right? Going back to the exit here. When you sell them. So all these comics, I say, oh, but you don't understand. So this one has gone up so much. No, it hasn't. It's just taking up space in our, in your office. So
That's so funny.
What is your hobby now? Tennis still?
I honestly have not prioritized time for any fun hobbies. I'm just sad to say. But yes, I do play a lot of tennis.
There you go. Still doing it, right?
I'm still doing it.
Pickleball?
No.
No, you're a purist?
I don't hate on pickleball. I just feel like as long as I can still run and jump, then I
could appreciate that.
I'm gonna.
For those who can't see, I'm actually in a cast.
I'm gonna keep doing tennis.
You should. Yeah. I'm jealous. Don't take that.
And I think I was gonna go hit with my oldest one, and then she said, I was like, "Hey, you want to go try pickleball?" And she's like, "That's for old people, bruh."
Wow.
Bruh, that's for old people. So I was like, "All right, fine. Let's not."
No, but she did well, man. She got it from you, dude. Right?
Yeah. So, anyways, I don't have like any cool hobbies. I don't like have a wine collection. I've got a couple of Jordan shoes, but that's really, I wouldn't call it a collection because I bought them at the outlets.
And you actually wear them.
And I do wear them. So I feel like it scratches the itch of when I was a kid. I've always wanted, a pair of Jordans, and so I bought a few. But they're by no means like the more expensive ones, I'm sure. I mean, I bought them at a Nike outlet when they were on discount. That's the extent. At least I could say.
See, I think you and I are true to self. I think we were that way back in high school.
Yeah.
And we're still the same way today. So.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, cool, Josh. Thanks so much for doing this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
I know everyone says that because they got to be nice, but I actually do mean it, to invite into your house and have such
It's not my house. This is literally part of the office.
They don't know that. So anyway, thanks for having me. Do this anytime. And, if I ever do one again, we're going to have to invite you back. I want to, repay the favor.
All right. Well, join me in thanking Josh for yet another episode of Conductive Conversations. Join us next time for yet another interesting chat with another founder.